The song was wrong, all wrong, because Emma Rosewood sang to an empty cradle in a house built for children who never came. St. Joseph, Missouri, sprawled along the western banks of the Missouri River in the spring of 1872, a town that had swelled with emigrants heading west and now served as a crossroads for ranchers, cowboys, and those seeking fresh starts. Emma had arrived 3 years prior with her husband Thomas, full of dreams about filling their modest home with laughter and tiny footsteps. Thomas had been a good man, steady and kind, working as a clerk at the general store. He had promised her a family, promised her the life she had always imagined. Then cholera swept through St. Joseph during the summer of 1871, taking Thomas and leaving Emma a widow at 22. The cradle had been Thomas's final gift, crafted during the winter before his death when they had believed Emma was finally with child. But that hope had faded like morning mist, another cruel disappointment in a series of losses. Now she sat in the gathering dusk, rocking the empty cradle with one foot while her voice carried a soft lullaby through the silent rooms. The ritual had become her evening companion, a way to remember what might have been, what should have been. Emma worked at the St. Joseph Hotel as a seamstress, mending linens and making alterations for travelers passing through. The work kept her fed, and the small house Thomas had rented still had 6 months remaining on the lease. After that, she did not know what would become of her. Her parents had both passed before she married, and Thomas had been an only child like herself. She existed in a strange limbo, neither quite living nor quite surrendering to despair. The knock at her door startled her from the melancholy song. She wiped her eyes quickly, smoothing her dark hair back into its simple bun as she rose. Through the window, she could see Mrs. Patterson, her landlady, standing on the small porch. "Evening, Emma," Mrs. Patterson said when Emma opened the door. The older woman's face was lined with concern. "I heard you singing again." "I apologize if I disturbed you," Emma said quietly. "No, child, it is not that." Mrs. Patterson stepped inside without invitation, as was her way. She had been kind to Emma after Thomas died, reducing the rent and often bringing by extra food. "I worry about you, sitting here alone every evening with that empty cradle. It is not healthy." "It brings me comfort," Emma replied, though she was not certain that was true anymore. "What would bring you comfort is moving forward with your life. You are a young woman still. Too young to shut yourself away like this." Mrs. Patterson moved to the cradle, running her weathered hand along its smooth wood. "Have you given any thought to what you will do when the lease is up? I have some money saved. Perhaps I can find a smaller room somewhere. Or perhaps you could consider other options." Mrs. Patterson fixed her with a meaningful look. "There is a man, Lucas Northfield. He has a ranch about 15 miles west of town. Lost his wife 2 years back to a fever. He has been looking for someone to help manage his household. He has 2 children who need a woman's care." Emma's stomach tightened. She had heard such suggestions before, thinly veiled proposals that she should remarry for practical reasons. "I am not ready for that. I am not suggesting marriage, though such things have been known to develop. I am suggesting employment, Emma. Honest work with room and board included. The children are young, a boy of 7 and a girl of 5. They need someone to look after them while he manages the ranch." Mrs. Patterson paused. "He is a good man, from what I hear, fair and decent. And those children need a mother's touch." The words struck deep. A mother's touch. That was what she longed to provide, what she had been denied. To care for children, even if they were not her own, might fill some of the emptiness that consumed her nights. "I do not know him," Emma said weakly. "He will be in town tomorrow, coming to the mercantile for supplies. I could introduce you. No commitment required, just a conversation." Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. Think about it, dear. Sometimes the Lord provides what we need in unexpected ways. After Mrs. Patterson left, Emma returned to the cradle. She did not sing this time, merely stared at the empty space meant for an infant. 2 children, the landlady had said, motherless children who needed care. Perhaps it was Providence offering her a purpose beyond grief. She barely slept that night, turning the possibility over in her mind. By morning, she had decided to at least meet this Lucas Northfield, if only to have considered all her options before the lease expired. The mercantile was busy when Emma arrived shortly after noon. She had taken extra care with her appearance, wearing her best dress of deep blue cotton and pinning her hair more carefully than usual. Mrs. Patterson had told her to look for a tall man with sandy hair, likely wearing work clothes and a worn brown hat. Emma found him near the back, examining rope coils with the careful attention of someone who depended on quality goods. He was indeed tall, perhaps 6 feet, with broad shoulders that spoke of hard physical labor. His face was weathered by sun and wind, with lines around his eyes that suggested he was in his early 30s. There was something solid about him, a quiet competence in the way he moved and assessed the merchandise. Mrs. Patterson appeared at Emma's elbow. That is him. Come, I will make the introduction. Lucas Northfield looked up as they approached, his eyes the color of summer grass. There was wariness in his expression, the guarded look of a man who had learned not to trust easily. Mr. Northfield, good day, Mrs. Patterson said warmly. I wanted to introduce you to Mrs. Emma Rosewood. Emma, this is Lucas Northfield. Madam. He removed his hat, revealing hair that needed cutting. His gaze swept over Emma briefly before settling somewhere near her shoulder as though direct eye contact was too much. Mrs. Patterson mentioned you might have need of household help, Emma said, fighting to keep her voice steady. This was harder than she had anticipated, putting herself forward like this. I might, he said carefully. You have experience with children. I was the eldest of 5 siblings before they passed from scarlet fever. I cared for them while my mother worked, and I have wanted children of my own for some time. The admission cost her something, but she pressed on. Mrs. Patterson said you have 2, a boy and a girl. James is 7. Sarah just turned 5 last month. Something shifted in his expression when he spoke their names, a softening around his eyes. Their mother died 2 years ago. I have been managing as best I can, but a ranch does not run itself. They need more attention than I can provide while handling the cattle and horses. What exactly would you require of me? Emma asked. Cooking, cleaning, mending. Teaching them their letters and numbers. Sarah particularly needs a woman to show her things I cannot. He met her eyes then, and she saw exhaustion there, the bone-deep weariness of a man carrying too much alone. I can offer room and board in the main house, plus $30 a month. The work would be steady but demanding. $30 was more than she made at the hotel. With room and board included, it was generous. Would I have my own room? Yes. The house has 4 bedrooms. The children share one, I have another, and there are 2 spare. You would have privacy. He paused. I will be plain with you, Mrs. Rosewood. I need help, but I also need someone who will stay. The children have already lost their mother. I cannot have them becoming attached to someone who will leave after a few months. The directness was almost startling. Emma appreciated it. I understand. I am looking for stability myself. My husband passed last year and my current situation is temporary. I want a place where I can be useful, where I can build something lasting. Lucas studied her for a long moment, and she felt the weight of his assessment. Finally, he nodded. Would you be willing to come out to the ranch, meet the children, see if it suits you before making a decision? Yes, I would like that. I am heading back this afternoon. You could ride with me in the wagon, stay for dinner, and I will bring you back to town before dark if you decide it is not right." Emma glanced at Mrs. Patterson, who gave her an encouraging nod. "All right. I need to inform my employer at the hotel that I will be absent. I will be loading supplies for another hour. Meet me at the wagon outside when you are ready." The ride to the Northfield ranch took them through rolling prairie land dotted with wildflowers and grazing cattle. Lucas drove the wagon with easy competence, his hands relaxed on the reins. He was not talkative, but the silence was not uncomfortable. Emma found herself studying the landscape, trying to imagine living here away from town. "How long have you had the ranch?" she asked eventually. "5 years. Bought it with money I saved from working cattle drives. Always wanted my own place, my own herd." He gestured to the cattle visible in the distance. "Have about 300 head now. Good grazing land, reliable water from the creek. It must be difficult managing alone. I have 2 ranch hands who help with the cattle and horses. They stay in the bunkhouse on the far side of the property. Good men, but they are not much help with cooking and cleaning." A hint of dry humor touched his voice. "Last week James tried to make breakfast and nearly set the kitchen on fire." Emma could not help a small smile. 7-year-old boys and cooking stoves are a dangerous combination. He was trying to help. "I had been up all night with a sick calf and overslept." He meant well. Lucas shook his head. "But it showed me how much they are missing. Sarah tries to clean, but she is too small to reach half the things that need doing. They need more than I can give them." There was pain in his voice, guilt that he was failing his children. Emma recognized it because she carried her own guilt, her own sense of inadequacy. She had failed to give Thomas a child, failed to become the mother she longed to be. Perhaps here she could ease both their failures. The ranch house came into view as they crested a low hill. It was a solid structure of wood and stone, larger than Emma had expected. A wide porch wrapped around the front, and she could see a barn and several outbuildings nearby. Chickens pecked in a yard, and a dog rose from the porch to bark a greeting. "That is Blue," Lucas said. "He is friendly, just noisy." 2 small figures burst from the house as the wagon approached. The boy was tall for 7, all gangly limbs and enthusiasm. The girl was smaller, with blonde hair in tangled braids and a dress that needed mending. "Pa," the boy called. "Did you get the peppermint sticks?" "I did, James. Mind your manners, we have a guest." Lucas set the brake and climbed down, then came around to help Emma from the wagon. His hands were strong and calloused as he steadied her. Both children stared at Emma with open curiosity. Sarah hung back, one finger in her mouth, while James stepped forward boldly. "Are you coming to stay?" James asked. "James, where are your manners?" Lucas said, but not unkindly. "This is Mrs. Rosewood. She is here to visit to see if she might like to help take care of you too." "Like a new ma?" Sarah asked around her finger. Emma's heart twisted. "Like someone to help your father and take care of the house. And to take care of you." The inside of the house revealed the truth of Lucas's words. It was clean enough, but clearly lacking a woman's touch. Dishes were stacked haphazardly, curtains hung crooked, and dust gathered in corners. The furniture was well made but stark, functional without warmth. Yet Emma could see the potential. The house had good bones, plenty of space and large windows that let in afternoon light. With proper care and attention, it could be a real home. Sarah showed Emma the bedroom that would be hers, chattering about how she hoped Emma would stay because she wanted someone to braid her hair properly and teach her to sew like her ma used to do. The child's obvious hunger for maternal affection was heartbreaking. Dinner was a simple affair of beans and cornbread that Lucas prepared while Emma played a clapping game with Sarah. James hovered nearby, trying to appear disinterested but clearly watching Emma's every move. These children were starved for more than food. As the sun began to set, painting the prairie in shades of gold and amber, Lucas walked Emma out to the porch while the children played with the dog in the yard. "You are good with them," he said quietly. "They are wonderful children. You should be proud." "I am. But I also know they need more than I have been giving them." He turned to face her fully. "I will be honest, Mrs. Rosewood. I can see you are good and kind. You have a natural way with children. If you are willing, I would like you to come work for us. I think you would be a blessing to this family." Emma watched Sarah attempting to teach the dog to dance, her small voice full of laughter. She thought of her empty house in town, the silent rooms and the cradle she sang to each night. Here was noise and life and purpose. Here was a chance to matter to someone. "I will need a few days to settle my affairs in town and gather my belongings," she said. Lucas's face broke into the first genuine smile she had seen from him. It transformed his features, making him look younger, less burdened. "Take whatever time you need. When you are ready, send word and I will come fetch you." The return trip to town was quieter, but the silence felt different now, weighted with possibility rather than emptiness. Emma found herself already thinking about the house, about what she would do first, how she would organize the kitchen and tend to the children's clothes. For the first time since Thomas died, she felt something other than grief. 3 days later, Emma packed her few belongings into a single trunk. She sold most of the furniture, having no need to transport it to the ranch. But she kept the cradle. She could not bring herself to part with it, even though she knew it might cause her pain. Mrs. Patterson helped her load it into Lucas's wagon when he arrived. "You are doing the right thing," the older woman said, embracing Emma. "Those children need you, and I think you need them too." Lucas said nothing about the cradle, though he handled it carefully as he secured it in the wagon bed. If he wondered about it, he kept his questions to himself. The children were waiting on the porch when they arrived. Sarah bouncing with excitement, and James trying to maintain a dignified reserve that cracked when he ran forward to help carry Emma's bags. Her room was exactly as she remembered, but someone had made an effort to prepare it. Fresh curtains hung at the window and wildflowers sat in a jar on the dresser. The bed was made with clean linens and the floor had been swept. "Sarah picked the flowers," James informed her importantly, "and I swept. You both did wonderfully, thank you." Emma set her carpet bag on the bed and turned to find Lucas in the doorway with her trunk. "Where would you like this?" "At the foot of the bed is fine." He set it down carefully, then straightened. "I will let you get settled. Take your time. The children can show you where everything is in the kitchen when you are ready." That first evening, Emma cooked a proper meal of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. The children ate as though they had never seen real food before, and Lucas kept glancing at her across the table with an expression she could not quite read. Gratitude, perhaps, or relief. After dinner, Sarah asked Emma to braid her hair before bed. The girl's blonde locks were tangled and needed patient work to smooth. Emma sat with her on the porch while the light faded, working through the snarls gently while Sarah chattered about her doll and the kittens in the barn and how she wanted to learn to make pie. James sat nearby, pretending to whittle a stick, but clearly listening to every word. Lucas tended to the horses in the barn, giving them space but visible through the open doors. When Sarah's hair was finally braided neatly, the little girl turned and hugged Emma fiercely. "I am glad you came to live with us." Emma held her close, breathing in the scent of sunshine and childhood, and felt something locked tight in her chest begin to loosen. "I am glad too." The days developed a rhythm. Emma rose before dawn to start breakfast, feeding the men and children before they began their work. Lucas and the ranch hands would head out to check the cattle and mend fences, while James helped with smaller chores, and Sarah shadowed Emma through her household tasks. Emma discovered that running the ranch household was indeed demanding work. There was always cooking to be done, laundry to scrub, floors to sweep, and countless small repairs needed. But it was good work, purposeful work. She fell into bed, each night exhausted but satisfied in a way she had not felt in years. The children thrived under her care. Sarah's dresses were mended and clean, her hair always neatly braided. James began staying cleaner and minded his manners at the table. Emma started teaching them their letters in the afternoons, using a slate board Lucas had stored away. Both children were quick learners, hungry for attention and knowledge. Lucas remained more distant. He was polite, appreciative of the meals and clean house, but he kept a careful space between himself and Emma. At first, she assumed he was simply reserved by nature. But as weeks passed, she began to suspect he was deliberately maintaining boundaries. It made sense, she supposed. He had hired her as an employee, not a companion. He was probably concerned about impropriety or perhaps protecting his own heart from further loss. She told herself it did not matter, that she was here for the children, not for anything else. But she could not help noticing things about him. The gentle way he corrected the children without harshness. His patience when teaching James to handle the horses. The weariness in his shoulders after long days, and how he always checked on the children before he retired each night, standing quietly in their doorway to watch them sleep. One evening in late May, a month after Emma's arrival, a spring storm rolled across the prairie. The wind picked up suddenly during dinner, rattling the windows and sending the chickens fleeing for shelter. Lucas stood at the window, frowning at the darkening sky. Bad one coming. I need to make sure the horses are secured. He grabbed his hat and coat. Can I help? James asked eagerly. Not this time, son. Stay inside with Mrs. Rosewood and your sister. He was out the door before anyone could protest. The storm hit with fury. Rain lashed the windows and thunder shook the walls. Sarah pressed close to Emma, frightened by the noise. Emma held her on the sofa, with James sitting nearby trying to appear brave. She found herself watching the door, worrying about Lucas out in the storm. He returned nearly an hour later, soaked through and shivering. Emma quickly poured hot coffee and pushed him toward the stove. You need to get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death, she said. I am fine, he protested, but his teeth chattered. You are freezing. Go change, and I will heat some soup. She used the same firm tone she employed with James when he was being stubborn. To her surprise, Lucas obeyed without further argument. When he returned in dry clothes, she had soup waiting and a blanket ready. She made him sit by the fire while she served him, ignoring his protests that she was fussing too much. The children need you healthy, she said simply. You are no good to them sick. The children need me or you need me, he asked it quietly, almost to himself, but she heard. Emma met his eyes. Both. We all need you well. Something passed between them in that moment, an acknowledgement that they were no longer merely employer and employee, but something more complex. Lucas held her gaze for a long moment, before nodding and returning his attention to his soup. The storm raged through the night. Emma lay awake in her room, listening to the thunder and wind. She thought about Lucas's question, about needs and wants, and the strange situation they found themselves in. She was growing attached to this family, to these children, to this life. And if she was honest with herself, she was growing attached to Lucas too. He was nothing like Thomas. Where her late husband had been gentle and bookish, Lucas was strong and direct. Thomas had worked with numbers and letters, Lucas with animals and land. Yet both men shared a fundamental decency, a capacity for kindness that drew her. She thought about the cradle in the corner of her room. She had not sung to it since arriving at the ranch. There had been no time, no need. Her evenings were filled with real children who needed her attention. The empty space that had consumed her was slowly being filled with purpose and belonging. Summer arrived with hot winds and long days. The ranch work intensified, and Emma found herself working from before dawn until well after dark. She learned to manage the large garden, preserving vegetables for winter. She taught Sarah to sew simple stitches and supervised James's reading practice. She cooked for the ranch hands during branding season, feeding hungry men who treated her with respectful courtesy. Lucas continued to maintain his careful distance, but there were moments when Emma caught him watching her with an expression she could not quite interpret. When she struggled to carry a heavy pot, he was there to help. When she mentioned needing supplies from town, he made the trip without being asked. Small gestures of consideration that went beyond employer courtesy. One scorching July afternoon, Emma was working in the garden when she heard Sarah screaming. She dropped her basket and ran toward the barn, her heart in her throat. She found Lucas kneeling beside James, who was crying and clutching his arm. Sarah stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. What happened? Emma dropped to her knees beside them. He fell from the loft, Lucas said, his voice tight. I told him not to climb up there alone. Emma quickly examined James's arm. It was already swelling, and he whimpered when she touched it gently. I think it might be broken. We need to get him to the doctor in town. Lucas scooped James up carefully. Bring Sarah. We will all go. The ride to town was tense, with James trying to be brave but occasionally letting out small cries of pain. Emma held him carefully, supporting his injured arm. Sarah sat pressed against her other side, still crying softly. The doctor in St. Joseph confirmed the break and set James's arm in a splint. Keep it immobilized for 6 weeks. He should heal fine, but no climbing or rough play during that time. James's face fell. 6 weeks? But Pa needs my help. Your Pa needs you healthy more than he needs your help right now, the doctor said kindly. Listen to Mrs. Rosewood and follow instructions. On the ride back to the ranch, Emma sat in the wagon bed with both children, keeping them comfortable despite the jostling. James eventually fell asleep against her shoulder, exhausted from pain and fear. You were good with him, Lucas said quietly once the children were both dozing. Kept him calm when he was scared. That is what children need when they are hurt. Someone to stay calm and tell them it will be all right. Their mother would have done the same. You remind me of her sometimes, the way you care for them. He paused. That is meant as a compliment. Margaret was the best mother I have ever seen. Thank you. That is kind of you to say. It is not kindness, just truth. Lucas glanced back at the sleeping children. They have not been this happy since she died. I was worried they would forget how to be children with only me to raise them. But you brought something back to this house, something we all needed. Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. They are wonderful children, easy to love. Yes, Lucas agreed softly. They are. James's injury forced him to slow down, which frustrated the active boy to no end. Emma kept him occupied with reading lessons and teaching him to help with simple kitchen tasks that did not require 2 good arms. She made him a sling decorated with pictures Sarah drew, which improved his mood considerably. Lucas checked on them more frequently during this time, coming into the house throughout the day to see how James was managing. Emma would catch him watching her teach the children or tend to household tasks, that same unreadable expression on his face. One evening in August, after the children were asleep, Emma was finishing the dishes when Lucas came in from his final check of the livestock. Coffee, she offered, as had become their habit. Please. He sat at the table with a weary sigh. Emma poured 2 cups and joined him. The kitchen was quiet except for the tick of the clock and the occasional creak of the house settling. These evening moments had become something she looked forward to, a peaceful end to busy days. "I have been thinking," Lucas began, then stopped, seeming unsure how to continue. "About what?" "About your position here, about making it more permanent." He looked down at his coffee. "The 6 months we initially discussed will be up soon. I would like you to consider staying on indefinitely." Emma's heart skipped. "I have been happy here. I would like to stay." "Good, that is good." He looked relieved, then hesitant. "There is something else. Something I should probably not say, but I have never been good at keeping silent about important things." "What is it?" "You came here as an employee, someone to help with the house and children. And you have done that beyond anything I could have hoped for, but somewhere along the way it became more than that." He finally met her eyes. "You became part of this family, Emma. The children love you and I." He stopped, jaw working. "You what?" Emma's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I find myself thinking about you more than an employer should think about his employee. I look forward to these evenings, to talking with you. I notice when you smile, and I want to make you smile more often. I think about what it would be like if you were here not just as someone hired to help, but as—" He trailed off again. "As what, Lucas?" "As my wife. As the children's mother in truth, not just in practice." The words came out in a rush, as though he had been holding them back for too long. "I know it has only been a few months. I know it might seem too soon or improper to even suggest. But I am tired of pretending I do not care for you. I am tired of maintaining distance when all I want is to be closer." Emma's hands shook around her coffee cup. "I did not know you felt this way. You have been so careful to keep space between us." "Because I was trying to be respectful. You came here as a widow, grieving your husband. I did not want to take advantage of your situation or push you into something you were not ready for." He reached across the table, stopping just short of taking her hand. "But if there is any chance you might feel the same way, I want you to know I would count myself the most fortunate man alive to have you as my wife." Emma thought about Thomas, about the love they had shared and the life they had planned. That life was gone, taken by disease and fate. But here was another possibility, another chance at the family she had always wanted. And Lucas was not Thomas, but that did not mean he was less. He was strong where Thomas had been gentle, direct where Thomas had been contemplative. Different but good, so very good. "I never thought I would consider marrying again," she admitted. "After Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over. But being here, with you and the children, I have felt myself coming back to life. I have felt myself hoping again." "Is that hope enough to build on?" Emma finally let herself acknowledge what she had been denying for weeks. "I care for you, Lucas. I do not know if it is love yet, but it could become love. It feels like it is already becoming love." His face lit with such joy that it transformed him. "That is all I need to hear. We can take our time, let it grow naturally. I do not need to rush you to the altar. I just needed you to know how I feel, to know that I want this to be more than a business arrangement." "What about the children? Should we tell them?" "Not yet. Let us be sure first. Let us see where this goes." He finally took her hand, his palm warm and rough against hers. "But for now, it is enough to know we are both feeling this, whatever this is." They sat together in the quiet kitchen, hands joined across the table, and Emma felt something shift inside her. The grief that had defined her for so long began to transform into something else. Not forgotten, but incorporated into someone new, someone who could love again. Over the following weeks, their relationship changed in subtle ways. Lucas found more excuses to be near her, helping with tasks she could manage alone but accepting gracefully when she allowed it. They talked more in the evenings, sharing stories about their pasts, their dreams, their fears. He told her about Margaret, about their courtship and marriage, about the pain of watching her die and being helpless to stop it. Emma told him about Thomas, about her disappointment at never conceiving, about the loneliness that had nearly consumed her. "You will make a wonderful mother," Lucas said one night. "The children already see you that way. I worry sometimes that I am overstepping, that Margaret's memory will be diminished if I take her place." "You are not taking her place, you are filling an empty space. There is a difference." He touched her face gently. "Margaret will always be their mother, the one who gave birth to them. But you are becoming their mother too, in all the ways that matter. Children can love more than one mother. There is room in their hearts for both." The tenderness in his touch, in his words, made Emma's throat tight. "I love them so much already. Sometimes it frightens me how much I love them." "That is how it should be. That is what they need." He leaned closer, and Emma thought he might kiss her, but he stopped himself. "I am trying to be patient to give you time, but I want you to know it is getting harder every day." "What is getting harder?" "Not kissing you. Not pulling you into my arms and telling you I love you." Emma's breath caught. "You love me." "I think I started loving you the day you arrived and Sarah ran to you like she had been waiting her whole life for you to show up. I think I loved you when you made me sit by the fire during that storm and fussed over me. I think I have been loving you in 100 small moments, and it has just taken me this long to admit it to myself." "Lucas." His name was barely a whisper. "You do not have to say it back. I just wanted you to know. I am done keeping it to myself." He stood, pulling back before the moment could intensify further. "Good night, Emma." She sat alone in the kitchen long after he left, her heart racing. She had not expected such a declaration, had not expected the intensity of her own response. She cared for Lucas deeply, had come to depend on his steady presence and quiet strength. Was that love? Or was it simply gratitude and affection? As summer faded into autumn, Emma found her answer. It came not in a grand revelation, but in 1,000 small moments. The way her heart lifted when she heard Lucas's boots on the porch. The way she found herself watching for him throughout the day. The way she imagined their future together, not as employer and employee, not even just as husband and wife, but as true partners building a life together. She loved him. Somewhere between the meals shared and the children tucked in and the evening conversations, she had fallen completely in love with Lucas Northfield. The realization came to full clarity one October evening. They were all in the parlor, Lucas reading the newspaper, Emma mending clothes, and the children playing quietly on the floor. It was an ordinary domestic scene, nothing remarkable about it. Yet Emma looked around at these people she had come to love and felt such overwhelming gratitude that tears pricked her eyes. This was the family she had always wanted. Not the one she had planned with Thomas, but a family nonetheless. Real and imperfect and beautiful. Lucas glanced up and caught her watching. "What is it? Why do you look so sad?" "I am not sad. I am the opposite of sad." She set down her mending. "Children, it is time to get ready for bed." "Already," James protested. "It is past your bedtime. Go brush your teeth and put on your night clothes. I will come tuck you in shortly." After the children reluctantly trudged upstairs, Lucas stood and came to sit beside Emma on the sofa. "What is on your mind?" "I have been thinking about what you said, about loving me, about wanting to marry me." His expression grew guarded. "Have you decided it is a bad idea?" "No." Emma took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I have decided it is a wonderful idea. I have decided that I love you too, Lucas, that I want to be your wife truly and completely. That I want to be a real mother to James and Sarah, to make this family official in every way." The joy that spread across his face was answer enough, but he pulled her close and whispered against her hair, "Are you certain?" Are you sure this is what you want? I have never been more certain of anything. I love you. I love the children. I want this life with you. He pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands. I am going to kiss you now, Emma Rosewood. I have been waiting months for this. His lips met hers gently at first, almost tentative, as though afraid she might disappear. Then the kiss deepened, and Emma felt herself responding with equal fervor. This was different from kissing Thomas, but no less wonderful. Lucas kissed her with the same steady intensity he brought to everything else, thorough and present and absolutely devoted. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. Marry me. Tomorrow, next week, whenever you are ready, just say you will marry me. Yes, yes, I will marry you. They told the children the next morning at breakfast. Sarah squealed with delight and immediately wanted to know if she could call Emma Mama now. James tried to maintain his 7-year-old dignity but could not hide his smile. So you are going to be our real ma? He asked. I will be your real mother in every way that matters, Emma assured him. If you want me to be. I want that, he said firmly. Then, more quietly, I have wanted that for a while. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church in St. Joseph. Sarah wore a new dress Emma had made for the occasion, and James stood proudly beside his father. Mrs. Patterson cried happy tears, and several of Lucas's friends from surrounding ranches attended. Emma wore a dress of cream-colored silk that Lucas had insisted on buying, despite her protests about the expense. When she walked down the aisle and saw Lucas waiting for her, his eyes bright with love and promise, she knew this was right. Thomas would have wanted her to be happy, to find love again. And she had found it in this unexpected place with this strong, kind man. The Reverend spoke the familiar words about love and faithfulness, about two becoming one. When Lucas kissed her as his wife, Emma felt the final pieces of her broken heart slide into place. Not replaced, not forgotten, but healed. The ranch hands had decorated the house with ribbons and wildflowers while they were in town. A neighbor woman had prepared a feast, and the celebration lasted into the evening. Sarah danced with anyone who would partner her, and James ate 3 pieces of cake, despite Emma's mild protests. That night, after the guests had gone and the children were finally asleep, Lucas led Emma to what was now their shared bedroom. He had moved her belongings in during the day, combining their things in a way that felt both strange and right. Are you happy? He asked, pulling her into his arms. Happier than I ever imagined being again, Emma admitted. This life, this family, it is more than I dared to hope for. You gave me back something I thought I had lost forever, Lucas said, his voice rough with emotion. You gave my children a mother, you gave this house warmth. You gave me a reason to hope for the future again. He kissed her softly. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make you happy, Emma Northfield. You already do. Every day, you already do. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, a coming together of 2 people who had both known loss and were choosing to embrace life again. Lucas was patient and gentle, attentive to Emma's needs and responses. Emma let herself be fully present, letting go of the past and embracing this new future. Afterward, lying in Lucas's arms while the prairie wind whispered outside, Emma thought about the cradle still sitting in the corner of what used to be her room. She had not sung to it since the day she arrived at the ranch. She did not need to anymore. Her arms were full, her heart was full, her life was full. But perhaps, if God was willing, that cradle might yet fulfill its purpose. Winter arrived cold and harsh. Emma had never experienced a prairie winter before, but Lucas had prepared well. They had ample firewood, preserved food from the summer garden, and warm blankets. The family drew close during the long, dark evenings, playing games and reading together by firelight. Emma taught Sarah to knit, and they made scarves for everyone. James learned to play checkers and proved to be surprisingly strategic. Lucas carved small wooden animals for the children and fixed everything that needed mending. They were snowed in for days at a time, but rather than feeling trapped, Emma felt cozy and protected. On Christmas morning, Emma woke feeling nauseated. She barely made it to the chamber pot before losing what little was in her stomach. Lucas woke immediately, holding her hair back and bringing her water. "Are you all right? Maybe that venison we had last night was not good." But Emma knew it was not the venison. She had suspected for a few weeks now but had been waiting to be certain. The nausea, the exhaustion, the tenderness in her breasts. She knew these signs, had hoped for them so many times before with Thomas. "I am fine," she managed. "Or rather, I will be fine in a few months." Lucas stared at her, not comprehending at first. Then understanding dawned and his eyes went wide. "Emma, are you saying what I think you are saying? I am with child, Lucas. We are going to have a baby." The joy on his face was everything she could have hoped for. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she was made of glass and might break. "Are you certain? As certain as I can be without seeing the doctor." "But yes, I am certain. A baby." He said it with wonder, as though he could not quite believe it. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy, Emma, I am." He pulled back to look at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. "You have already given me so much, and now this. How did I get so fortunate?" They told the children after breakfast. Sarah was thrilled at the prospect of being a big sister, immediately volunteering to help with everything. James was more reserved, but Emma could see him processing the news, deciding how he felt about it. Later that day, he came to her while she was resting on the sofa. "Mrs. Emma, I mean Ma." "Yes, sweetheart, when the baby comes, will you still have time for me and Sarah? Or will you only care about the new baby?" Emma's heart broke a little at the vulnerable question. She pulled him close. "James, I will always have time for you and Sarah. You two are my first children, my precious children. A new baby does not change that. My heart is not a pie that gets smaller when you divide it. It just grows bigger to hold everyone I love. Promise. I promise. You and Sarah will always be just as important to me as any other children we might have. Always." He seemed satisfied with that, relaxing against her. "I think I will be a good big brother." "I think so too." The pregnancy progressed normally, though Emma battled nausea for the first few months. Lucas was attentive to the point of being overprotective, trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work. Emma had to gently remind him that she was pregnant, not ill, and needed to stay active. By spring, her condition was obvious, her belly swelling with new life. She retrieved the cradle from storage, the one Thomas had made that had sat empty for so long. Lucas found her one afternoon, running her hand over its smooth wood. "I did not know you had kept that," he said gently. "It was the last thing Thomas made. I could not part with it, even though it hurt to look at." She met his eyes. "Do you mind that I kept something from my life with him?" "Of course not. He was your husband, you loved him. That is part of who you are." Lucas knelt beside her, placing his hand over hers on the cradle. "And now his gift will finally be used. I think he would be happy about that, knowing you found love and family again." "I think so too." Sarah was fascinated by Emma's changing body, constantly wanting to feel the baby kick. James was more shy about it, but occasionally would place his hand on Emma's belly and smile when he felt movement. Both children talked to the baby regularly, telling it about the ranch and the animals and all the things they would show it when it arrived. Summer brought the baby's due date closer. Lucas arranged for the doctor from town to stay at the ranch for the final week, not wanting to risk Emma going into labor without medical help nearby. The older man, Dr. Sullivan, was patient and kind, assuring Lucas that Emma was healthy and the delivery should proceed normally. Emma went into labor on a hot July evening. The pains started gradually, and at first she thought they might be false labor. But as they intensified and grew regular, she knew it was time. Lucas sent one of the ranch hands to fetch Dr. Sullivan from the bunkhouse where he had been staying. The labor was long and difficult. Emma had heard other women talk about childbirth, but nothing truly prepared her for the reality of it. The pain was immense, wave after wave crashing through her body. But between the pains, Lucas held her hand and whispered encouragement, and she drew strength from his presence. Dawn was breaking when the baby finally arrived with a strong, healthy cry. Dr. Sullivan cleaned the infant and wrapped it in soft blankets before placing the baby in Emma's arms. "Congratulations, Mrs. Northfield. You have a fine, healthy son." Emma looked down at the tiny face, the perfect fingers and toes, and felt love crash over her with an intensity that stole her breath. This baby, this miracle she had waited so long for, was finally here. Tears streamed down her face as she held him close. "A son," Lucas breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "Emma, we have a son. Would you like to hold him?" Lucas took the baby with careful reverence, cradling the infant against his chest. He looked at Emma with such love and gratitude that she began crying again. "Thank you. Thank you for this gift, for this family, for everything." They named him Thomas Luke Northfield, honoring both of Emma's loves. Lucas suggested the name, insisting that Thomas deserved to be remembered in this new life Emma had built. When James and Sarah were finally allowed in to meet their new brother, Sarah climbed carefully onto the bed beside Emma, gazing at the baby with wonder. James stood back at first, uncertain, until Emma called him closer. "Would you like to hold your brother?" she asked. "I might drop him," James worried. "You will not drop him. Come sit here and I will show you how." With careful instruction, James held baby Thomas for the first time, his young face serious with concentration. "He is so small." "You were this small once too," Lucas said, sitting on the other side of the bed. "And now look at you, 7 years old and nearly big enough to work alongside me." "When will Thomas be big enough to play with us?" Sarah wanted to know. "Not for a while yet. Babies need time to grow. But you can help take care of him, help me change and feed him." Emma smiled at her daughter. "Being a big sister is an important job." Sarah beamed, clearly ready to take her responsibilities seriously. The days after Thomas's birth were exhausting but joyful. Emma had worried that she might not bond with the baby, that her years of longing and disappointment might have damaged something in her. But the moment she held him, all those fears evaporated. She loved him with a fierceness that surprised her, this tiny person who depended entirely on her for survival. Lucas was a devoted father, taking turns walking the floor with Thomas during fussy nights, changing diapers without complaint, and looking at his son with such pride that it made Emma's heart swell. He was equally attentive to James and Sarah, making sure they did not feel neglected by the new baby's arrival. One evening, when Thomas was about 2 months old, Emma found Lucas standing over the cradle watching the baby sleep. She came to stand beside him, leaning into his warmth. "What are you thinking about?" she asked quietly. "About how much has changed in the past year, how you came into our lives and transformed everything." He slipped his arm around her waist. "How empty this house was before you, how empty I was, and now look at us. I was empty too." Singing to an empty cradle, grieving a life that never happened. Emma looked down at their sleeping son. "You gave me everything I had dreamed of, Lucas. A family, children to love, a purpose beyond grief. You filled our arms and our hearts. The children adore you and I." He turned her to face him. "I love you more every day. I did not think it was possible to love someone as much as I love you." Emma reached up to cup his face. "I love you too. You and the children are my whole world." He kissed her then, slow and deep, a kiss full of promise and passion and devotion. When they broke apart, Thomas stirred in the cradle, making small sleeping sounds that made them both smile. "We should probably sleep while he is sleeping," Emma said reluctantly. "Probably. Though I can think of better ways to spend the time we have alone." Emma laughed softly, swatting his chest playfully. "The doctor said 6 weeks. It has barely been 2 months. I am a patient man, but you make it very difficult to remember that." He kissed her forehead. "Come on, let us get what sleep we can." As autumn arrived again, marking more than a year since Emma had come to the ranch, the family settled into new rhythms. Thomas was growing quickly, a happy baby who loved being held and smiled easily. James had started helping more with the ranch work, proud to be learning from his father. Sarah doted on her baby brother and had become quite helpful around the house. Emma stood on the porch one October evening, watching the sun set over the prairie while Thomas dozed in her arms. The air was crisp with the promise of coming winter, and she could hear Lucas and James working in the barn, their voices carrying on the breeze. Sarah came out to join her, slipping her small hand into Emma's free one. "Ma, are you happy?" "Very happy, sweetheart. Why do you ask?" "Because sometimes you stand out here and look like you are thinking hard about something, and I wanted to make sure you were not sad." Emma squeezed her hand. "I am thinking about how blessed I am. About how I came here feeling so lost and broken, and your father and you and James gave me a reason to hope again. You all taught me that my story was not over, that there was still so much good waiting for me. I am glad you came to live with us. I do not remember much about our other mama, but I think she would be happy that you take such good care of us. I hope so. I hope she knows how much I love you all." Lucas emerged from the barn with James, both of them heading toward the house. When Lucas spotted Emma and Sarah on the porch, his face broke into that smile she loved, the one that made her feel like the most important person in the world. This, Emma thought, was what it meant to build a life from broken pieces. Not forgetting what came before, not pretending the grief never existed, but choosing to move forward anyway. Choosing to love again, to hope again, to embrace the unexpected blessings that came from the unlikeliest places. She had come to this ranch singing lullabies to an empty cradle, her arms and heart aching with emptiness. And Lucas had promised to fill her arms, not just with his children but with his love, his loyalty, his whole heart. He had kept that promise in every way that mattered. As her family gathered on the porch for the evening, Sarah chattering about her day, James proudly showing Emma a skill his father had taught him, Lucas taking baby Thomas so Emma could wrap her shawl more tightly, she felt complete. Not because the past was erased, but because the present was full enough to hold both memory and joy. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of coming winter and the promise of seasons to come. Emma looked at her husband, her children, her home, and knew that she had found exactly what she had been searching for. She had found family. She had found love. She had found herself again. And every night now, when she sang lullabies, they were no longer songs of grief but songs of gratitude and joy. The cradle was no longer empty. Her arms were no longer empty. Her heart was no longer empty. The cowboy had kept his promise and in doing so had given her back her life. Years passed in the rhythm of ranch life. Thomas grew from baby to toddler, then to a sturdy boy of 3. Emma found herself pregnant again when Thomas was 2, delivering a healthy daughter they named Margaret Rose, after Lucas's first wife and Emma's mother. Sarah was 9 when Maggie was born and took her role as big sister with utmost seriousness. James, now 10, split his time between helping his father with increasingly complex ranch work and watching over his younger siblings. The ranch prospered under Lucas's management. They expanded the herd and improved the grazing land. Lucas built a larger barn and hired 2 more permanent ranch hands. Emma's garden flourished, providing vegetables they sold in town along with eggs from her growing flock of chickens. But more than the physical prosperity, the family thrived. The house that had been stark and lonely when Emma first arrived now rang with children's laughter and the sounds of a full life. Coats hung on every peg by the door. Boots of all sizes lined up on the porch. The kitchen table was always crowded with people and conversation. Emma sometimes thought about the woman she had been, sitting alone in that small house in St. Joseph, singing to emptiness and wondering if she had any purpose left. That woman seemed like someone from another lifetime, though only 4 years had passed. She barely recognized herself in those memories. One evening in early spring, when Emma was rocking baby Maggie and watching the older children play outside, Lucas came in from his work and found her there. He had grown more weathered over the years, but no less handsome to her eyes. His hair had a few more threads of silver, and the lines around his eyes had deepened, but they were laugh lines now more than worry lines. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, kissing the top of her head before sitting beside her. "About how different everything is now. About how lost I was before I came here." "I was lost too," Lucas admitted. "I did not realize how lost until you showed me what it felt like to be found again." Through the window, they could see James teaching Thomas to throw a rope, while Sarah attempted to braid wildflowers into a crown. The scene was peaceful, ordinary, perfect. "You ever regret it?" Emma asked. "Taking on a widow you barely knew, trusting me with your children?" "Never once. You were the answer to prayers I did not know how to say." He took her free hand. "You brought life back to this house, Emma. You brought life back to me. You did the same for me. You and the children saved me from drowning in grief." Little Maggie stirred in Emma's arms, making small sounds. Lucas reached over to gently stroke the baby's soft hair. "I keep thinking we should be done having children, that 4 is enough. But then I look at you with our babies and I cannot help wanting more." Emma laughed softly. "4 is plenty, Lucas, though I will not say no if God has other plans. You are a wonderful mother. Each one of them is blessed to have you, even though I am not their birth mother." Emma sometimes still worried about this with James and Sarah, though they had long since started calling her Ma without hesitation. "You are their mother in every way that counts. They might not remember Margaret clearly, but they know you. You are the one who tends their scrapes, teaches them right from wrong, sits with them when they are sick. That is what makes a mother." The older children came running in then, breathless and full of stories about their play. Sarah wanted Emma to see the flower crown she had made. James needed Lucas to look at the knot he had tied. Thomas just wanted to be picked up and hugged. The peaceful moment transformed into loving chaos, and Emma embraced it. This was her life now. Not the one she had planned with Thomas all those years ago, but a good life nonetheless. Perhaps even better, because she had learned to appreciate it, had learned that love and family were gifts to be cherished, not taken for granted. That night, after all the children were finally asleep, Emma and Lucas stood together in the doorway of the room the 3 older children shared. James and Thomas bunked together, while Sarah had her own small bed. All 3 were sprawled in sleep, peaceful and secure. "We did good," Lucas whispered, his arm around Emma's waist. "We did," she agreed. They checked on baby Maggie sleeping in the cradle in their room. The cradle that had once been empty, that Emma had once sung to in loneliness and longing. Now it held their daughter, and someday it would hold other grandbabies, becoming a family heirloom passed down through generations. Emma thought about promises as she prepared for bed. Lucas had promised to fill her arms, and he had done that. But he had also filled her life, her heart, her very soul. He had given her not just children to love, but a partnership, a romance that grew deeper with each passing year. "I love you," she told him as they settled into bed. "I do not say it enough, but I love you more than I can express." "I know," Lucas said, pulling her close. "You show me every day in 1,000 ways, and I love you just as much." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, two people who had been broken finding wholeness together. The seasons continued their cycle. Winter gave way to spring, spring to summer, summer to autumn, autumn back to winter. The children grew. Thomas started learning his letters. Maggie took her first steps. James became tall enough to look his father almost in the eye. Sarah developed a talent for cooking and helped Emma prepare meals. When Thomas was 5 and Maggie was 3, Emma discovered she was pregnant again. She was 30 by then and wondered if she might be getting too old for childbearing. But the pregnancy progressed smoothly, and that autumn she delivered twin boys they named Henry and William. The house was now truly full to bursting, with 6 children ranging from infant to teenager. Lucas had to add another room, converting the attic into a proper sleeping space for James, who at 13 was pleased to have his own domain away from the younger children. Sarah, now 12, was Emma's right hand in managing the household. She took care of Maggie and the twins with maternal competence that made Emma proud. Thomas, at 5, was pure energy and mischief, keeping everyone on their toes. "I think we are done now," Emma told Lucas after the twins were born. 6 children is more than enough." "You said 4 was enough," Lucas teased, but he agreed. They were both getting older, and the demands of such a large family were considerable, even with Sarah's help and the prosperity the ranch enjoyed. The years that followed were full in the best possible ways. The ranch continued to thrive. James began taking on more responsibility, preparing to eventually run the operation himself someday. Sarah bloomed into a lovely young woman who drew attention from young men in town, though Lucas made it clear none of them were good enough for his daughter yet. Thomas and Maggie were thick as thieves, always getting into adventures together. The twins were quieter, content to play together and observe the world around them with serious eyes. Emma had long since stopped grieving her childless years with Thomas. She barely had time to remember those days, so busy was she with the life she lived now. But sometimes, when she had a rare, quiet moment, she would think about that young woman singing to an empty cradle and send her a thought of comfort across time. It would get better, she would tell that grieving girl. It would hurt less. And someday, unexpectedly, you will find yourself so happy you can barely contain it. One evening in late summer, when Emma was 35 and Lucas was 42, they took a rare walk together after the children were settled. Sarah was old enough to watch the younger ones for a bit, so they strolled hand in hand across the prairie as the sun set. "Do you ever think about how things might have been different?" Emma asked. "If I had never come to the ranch, if we had never met?" "I try not to," Lucas admitted. "It is too terrible to contemplate. You are so woven into my life now that I cannot imagine it without you." "I feel the same way. This life, this family, it is everything I never knew I needed." They stood together watching the colors paint the sky, two people who had found each other when both were lost. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the distant sound of their children's voices from the house. "Thank you," Emma said softly. "For what? For keeping your promise, for filling my arms and my heart and my life." She turned to face him. "For loving me. That was never a chore, Emma. Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done." He cupped her face in his work-worn hands. You made me whole again when I thought I would be broken forever. You gave my children a mother, gave me a partner, gave this ranch a heart. I should be thanking you. Then let us agree we are both grateful, both blessed. Agreed. He kissed her there on the prairie, the same land where they had built their life together. And Emma thought about journeys, about how sometimes the path we plan is not the path we walk, but the destination can still be exactly where we needed to be. As they walked back to the house, to their children and their life, Emma felt complete. Not because everything had been easy, not because there had been no pain or loss along the way, but because she had kept moving forward, had been brave enough to try again, to hope again, to love again. The years continued their march. James grew into a fine young man, taking over more of the ranch operations and eventually courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher. They married when he was 22, and Lucas deeded them a portion of the land to build their own house and start their own herd. Sarah married at 19 to a good man from town, a teacher who appreciated her intelligence and kindness. They settled in St. Joseph, and Sarah often brought her own children to visit the ranch where she had grown up. Thomas grew tall and strong, with Lucas's steady temperament and Emma's warm heart. Maggie was bright and curious, always asking questions and wanting to learn everything. The twins developed distinct personalities as they grew. Henry outgoing and adventurous, William quiet and thoughtful. Emma was 45 when she realized she was pregnant again, a complete surprise that left both her and Lucas stunned. They had not been preventing pregnancy, but after 5 years without conceiving, they had assumed their family was complete. "Are you all right with this?" Lucas asked, concern clear in his voice. "You are not young anymore, and pregnancy at your age can be dangerous." "I am healthy and strong," Emma assured him, though she had her own worries. "If God is giving us another child, then we will welcome it." The pregnancy was harder than her previous ones. Emma tired more easily and dealt with aches and pains she had not experienced before. But she was surrounded by family who helped. Sarah came to stay for a few weeks, bringing her own young children. Thomas and Maggie, now 14 and 12, helped manage the younger boys. Emma delivered a healthy daughter in the spring of 1887, 15 years after she first came to the ranch. They named her Grace because she was indeed a grace, an unexpected blessing in their middle age. 7 children, Lucas marveled, holding his new daughter with experienced hands. "We went from 3 to 7. 4, Emma corrected. "Thomas and Maggie and the twins, and now Grace." "You already had James and Sarah." "No, 7, because you are mother to all of them, not just the ones you bore." He looked at her with such love it made her throat tight. "You gave life to 4 and motherhood to 7. Emma reached for his hand. "We built something beautiful, did we not? We built everything I ever wanted, everything I never thought I would have again after Margaret died." He kissed her softly. "You gave me back my life, Emma. You and all these children, all this love and noise and chaos, you gave me back my life." As Grace grew from infant to toddler, Emma watched her older children building their own lives. James and his wife had their second child. Sarah was pregnant with her third. The cycle of life continued, expanding in ways Emma had never imagined during those lonely days singing to an empty cradle. She was 50 when Lucas came in from the fields one day clutching his chest. Dr. Sullivan, now quite elderly himself but still practicing, diagnosed a weak heart and ordered Lucas to reduce his workload. Thomas, now 19, stepped up to manage most of the ranch operations with James's help from his adjacent property. Lucas chafed at the restrictions but obeyed them because, as he told Emma, he wanted as many years with her as possible. They spent more time together, sitting on the porch watching grandchildren play, talking about their life and memories. "You remember the first day I came to the ranch?" Emma asked one evening, Grace playing at their feet while several grandchildren ran around the yard. "I remember thinking you looked sad but determined, like you were forcing yourself forward even though it hurt. I was. Every step felt like walking through water. But then Sarah took my hand and asked me to stay, and something in me shifted. She knew before I did that you were what we needed." Emma watched their youngest daughter toddle after her older brothers. "I never thought I would have this. After Thomas died, after all those years of disappointment, I thought motherhood would never be mine. And now look at you. 7 children, 13 grandchildren so far, with more likely on the way." Lucas took her hand. "You filled more than your own arms, Emma. You filled this whole ranch with life and love. We did it together." "Yes," he agreed, "together." Lucas lived another 8 years, long enough to see Grace turn 9 and start showing the same quick intelligence Sarah had possessed. Long enough to hold 17 grandchildren and see James successfully running the expanded ranch operation. Long enough to celebrate his and Emma's 34th anniversary. He died peacefully in his sleep one autumn night, Emma beside him as she had been for over 3 decades. She woke to find him still and quiet, his face peaceful. The grief was immense, a tearing in her chest that reminded her of losing Thomas all those years ago. But this time, she was not alone. She was surrounded by children and grandchildren who loved her, who grieved with her. They buried Lucas on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the land he had loved and built his life on. The entire community came to pay respects to a man who had been fair and generous and kind. Emma stood flanked by her children, watching as they lowered her husband into the ground, and felt the weight of loss pressing down. But she also felt the hands of her children holding her up, heard their voices offering comfort, saw the evidence of the life she and Lucas had built together spread out before her. He had kept his promise. He had filled her arms and in doing so had given her a legacy that would endure. Emma lived another 12 years after Lucas died, staying in the ranch house that held so many memories. She was surrounded by family, helping raise grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. She taught them to cook and sew, told them stories about their grandfather and the early days of the ranch, and loved them with the same fierce devotion she had given her own children. She was 71 when she fell ill with pneumonia. The family gathered, sensing the end was near. Emma lay in the bed she had shared with Lucas, surrounded by the 7 people she had raised and the extended family they had created. "I am not afraid," she told them. "I have lived a full life, a blessed life. I have loved and been loved, and that is all anyone can ask for." Sarah held her hand on one side, James on the other. The others crowded close, not willing to let her go but knowing they could not keep her. "Thank you," Emma whispered. "All of you, thank you for letting me be your mother." "Thank you for choosing us," James said, his voice breaking. "For coming to this ranch and saving us all." Emma smiled, thinking about that first day, about the empty cradle and the lonely woman who had sung to it. She thought about Lucas's promise and how thoroughly he had kept it. She thought about the journey from grief to joy, from emptiness to abundance. "Tell them," she said to her children. "Tell your children and their children. Tell them that it is never too late to start again, that love can find you even in the darkest times, that empty arms can be filled if you are brave enough to hope." She closed her eyes then, tired but content. And as she drifted away, she could almost hear Lucas calling to her, could almost see him waiting with that smile she loved, ready to take her hand again. Emma Rosewood Northfield had started her journey singing lullabies to an empty cradle. She ended it surrounded by the 7 children she had raised, the grandchildren they had given her, and the great-grandchildren who would carry her memory forward. The cowboy had promised to fill her arms, and he had done far more than that. He had filled her entire life with love, and that love would echo through generations to come. That was the greatest promise of all, and it had been kept beyond her wildest dreams.